There's a question that has started more fights in Indian WhatsApp groups than politics, cricket, and which biryani is better, all combined. Which is older, Sanskrit or Tamil? You've seen the argument, isn't it? That one uncle in the family groups who forwards a PDF at 6 a.m. in the morning, title in all caps, proof that Sanskrit is 10,000 years old. And then someone else from another group replies with a different PDF, also in all caps, different 10,000 years. And then it's on, the war. Both sides fully convinced, both sides absolutely sure. But here's the thing nobody in that group wants to hear. The question itself is broken. Not wrong, not unfair, just that the moment you actually sit with the evidence, it gets weird. Okay, so let's start with the standard story. Sanskrit is old, really old. The Rigveda, its oldest text, was composed roughly around 3,500 years back. In 1500 to 1200 BCE, about 3,500 years ago. Most scholars agree on this range, composed orally in the northwest of the subcontinent before anyone wrote it down. Tamil is also old. The earliest inscriptions we can actually see and touch date from around 3rd century BCE. Maybe the 6th century based on newer evidences. The Tolkappiyam, Tamil's oldest grammar, has layers that scholars date anywhere from the 2nd century BCE to the 5th century CE. That's about 2,200 years ago. And Sangam literature, that massive collection of Tamil poetry, generally falls between 300 BCE and 600 CE. That is about 1,700 years ago. So if you just compare the oldest known texts, Sanskrit wins, hands down, by maybe 1,000 years. So then what is the confusion, you ask? Well, there's more to this. Because that comparison only measures one thing. When was it first written down? It doesn't measure when people started speaking the language. And that changes everything. Think about it this way. Imagine there was a language made only by all the internet speaking, Gen Z slang that we today know of. Say Delulu and Poki and so on. It is only spoken, not formally a language. Well, at least yet. Which means it is not written down, it is not documented, but it is in use. What we need to understand is that writing is a technology. Language is older than writing, always. And this is when it gets interesting. The Rigveda was composed in Vedic Sanskrit, but Vedic Sanskrit came from somewhere. It descended from Proto-Indo-Aryan, which split from Proto-Indo-European, roughly around 2000 BCE or earlier. So the spoken ancestor of Sanskrit was already alive before the Rigveda existed. Now, here's the part that flips the whole thing. Tamil comes from Proto-Dravidian, and based on linguistic reconstruction, Proto-Dravidian was being spoken around the 4th millennium BCE. That is about 6,000 years ago. Big gap. A major 2018 study published in the Royal Society Open Science estimated the Dravidian language family to be about 4,500 years old. Some researchers push it even further back. Krishnamurti, one of the most respected Dravidian linguists, associates Proto-Dravidian with the early 3rd millennium BCE. So wait, if the ancestor of Tamil was being spoken in the 4th or 3rd millennium BCE and the Rigveda wasn't composed until the 2nd millennium BCE, then the language family that eventually became Tamil was already here on this subcontinent before Sanskrit's family arrived. According to Britannica, Dravidian speakers were likely widespread across northern India before Indo-Aryan speakers entered the picture even. The replacement of Dravidian languages by Aryan tongues in the north happened over centuries, completed before the Common Era. Sit with that for a second. But before sharing this video with your WhatsApp groups, hear this also. Proto-Dravidian, the stuff that was there before Tamil, is not like Tamil. Just like Proto-Indo-European is not Sanskrit. Nobody spoke Tamil in 4000 BCE. They spoke something that over thousands of years slowly became Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, and dozens of other languages. Same story on the other side as well. Vedic Sanskrit is not the Sanskrit the way we think of it today. Panini formalized classical Sanskrit grammar in the 4th century BCE. That's a separate thing. So we are comparing. What exactly is the question? That's why I said the question itself is broken. Kind of weird, isn't it? Hold on for a second. Let me crack this once and for all. See, the fantastic thing about science is that when we think we finally found the answer to something, someone digs up something new. And this is exactly what happened with Keeladi excavation. It's a small village near Madurai on the banks of the Vaigai River. Starting in 2014, archaeologists began excavating and found what looks like a well-organized ancient settlement. Brick houses, drainage systems, pottery, trade goods, the works. Radiocarbon dating put the settlement at the 6th century BCE, that is 2600 years ago, and they found pottery fragments with Tamil-Brahmi script on them, which, if the dating holds, pushes Tamil literacy back by a few centuries at least. Now, this is where the usual thing happened. Some scholars said, hold on, did the inscribed pottery actually come from the same soil layer as the carbon dated samples? The stratigraphy, that is the layering of soil and artifacts, got disputed. One archaeologist from Calcutta University pointed out that this needed more clarity. Fair enough, that's how archaeology works. You find something exciting, other people poke holes, you refine. But what happened after wasn't normal. Archaeologists got transferred. Reports got contested between state and central agencies. The excavation became political. As one analyst described it, the trenches at Keeladi became battlegrounds over who belongs at the center of India's civilizational story. That phrase, who belongs at the center of India's civilizational story, you've probably noticed this pattern. The moment any discovery touches language or history in India, it stops being about evidence. It becomes about identity. You may be thinking, why am I saying this? Well, we'll come back to this in a moment. Here's what gets lost in the argument. Sanskrit and Tamil didn't just exist on the same subcontinent. They shaped each other deeply for centuries. You know those sounds in Hindi and Sanskrit where you curl your tongue? Like ta, da, na? That backward curl. Most Indo-European languages don't have them. French doesn't. Greek doesn't. Even Avestan, which is Sanskrit's closest relative from ancient Iran, doesn't really have them. But Dravidian languages have had them since forever, since Proto-Dravidian time actually, 6,000 years ago. And many linguists believe Sanskrit picked up those sounds from living alongside with Dravidian speakers, probably borrowed them even, absorbed them, made them its own. Think about what that means. Some of the sounds we think of as quintessentially Sanskrit were shaped by the people who spoke the ancestors of Tamil. And it went both ways. Tamil absorbed Sanskrit vocabulary over centuries. The Tolkappiyam, Tamil's oldest grammar, shows clear influence from Sanskrit grammatical traditions. Scholars have traced parallels to Panini's work and to ideas from the Natya Shastra. You know that friend who moved abroad and now their Hindi has, well, all of these English words mixed in, isn't it? Meeting hai, deadline aa raha hai. They don't even notice it anymore. Languages do this. They borrow, they blend, they absorb whatever they're living next to. Sanskrit and Tamil did this for over 2,000 years. They are not enemies. They are neighbors who borrowed each other's sugar so many times that neither one remembers who started. There's one more thing that makes this whole debate kind of apples and oranges. Sanskrit had one of the most extraordinary oral traditions in human history. The Rigveda was composed around 1500 BCE, but it wasn't written down until roughly 300 BCE. Big gap. The oldest physical manuscript we have is around 1040 CE. That's a gap of 2500 years between composition and paper. They preserved it through memory, incredibly structured, precise, multi-layered methods of memorization. Scholars still find it astonishing. UNESCO added Rigveda manuscripts to the Memory of the World Register in 2007. Tamil, on the other hand, developed a writing in tradition relatively early. Tamil-Brahmi inscriptions on pottery go back to the 6th century BCE at Keeladi. Cave inscriptions near Madurai date to the 3rd century BCE, around 2,300 years ago. You can go and see them, touch the stone. So, Tamil has older physical evidence, stuff you can photograph and touch. Sanskrit has older composed texts, preserved in memory, two completely different kinds of old. As one professor at the University of Pennsylvania put it, Sanskrit is perhaps the oldest continuous language tradition in the sense that it's still producing literature and people still speak it, even if not as a first language. But some linguists point out that Tamir's ancestor was already on the subcontinent before Sanskrit's ancestor arrived. Apples, oranges. So oldest composed text, Sanskrit. Oldest inscription you can see, probably Tamil. Oldest spoken lineage on Indian soil, likely Dravidian. Oldest living language with continuous literature, Tamil has a strong case. Same questions, 4 different answers, depending on what you're measuring. Maybe that's the actual answer. So if someone asks which is older, Sanskrit or Tamil, just know that the question itself is broken. You can't answer it. It's like asking which came first, the chai or the biscuit. Bro, they only make sense if they are together. You know what's actually wild? India has 2 ancient language families, Dravidian and Indo-Aryan, living side by side for at least 3,000 to 4,000 years, shaping each other's grammar, borrowing each other's sounds, feeding into each other's poetry and philosophy and science. Together, they have produced some of the biggest, oldest, richest, and the most structurally complex literary traditions anywhere on earth. The Rigveda is one of the oldest surviving texts in any Indo-European language, preserved through memory for millennia. Sangam poetry contains some of the most vivid, emotionally precise writing from the ancient world. It was lost for nearly 1,000 years and rediscovered in monasteries in the 1800s. Tamil is spoken natively by almost 85 million people today. Still alive, still evolving. Panini's grammar of Sanskrit from the 4th century BCE is considered one of the greatest intellectual achievements in human history. Linguists still study it, and instead of marveling at all of this, we argue about which one came first. Like 2 siblings fighting at a family dinner about who was born first, when the whole family itself is extraordinary. There's something a little sad about this debate, not because it exists. Curiosity is fine, but because of what it's really about. Every Indian family has some version of this argument. Maybe not about languages, but about who was here first, whose contribution matters more, whose story gets told in the textbook. North versus South, Hindi heartland versus Dravidian pride, Sanskrit wale versus Tamil wale. And the real answer, the one that doesn't fit on a WhatsApp forward, is that both lineages are impossibly old. Both predate any written record. Both are products of migrations and settlements and contact that happened so long ago that the details are reconstructed from fragments. Dravidian speakers were likely here before Indo-Aryan speakers arrived. That's where the evidence points. But here first doesn't mean more important, and arrived later doesn't mean less rooted. Languages aren't flags, they are rivers, and rivers don't compete. They converge. Maybe the question isn't which language is older, maybe it is why we need one of them to be older. What does that need tell us about ourselves? You've probably thought about this. What stood out to you? What do you think? So that's what I had to say about which is older, Sanskrit or Tamil. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if I missed something or if there is something that you want to educate me on. Happy to learn more. See you in another video. This is Karthik signing off.